process that would ensure that an independent arbiter would make the decision about releasing those documents. I would remind the member again that it is an independent decision of the Public Health Agency to make redactions. I'm sure he's not suggesting that anything else other than that should happen.
The honourable member from Selkirk Interlake
that
Eastman.
House leader actually sued the Speaker. Dr. Chu maliciously shared technology and materials from the Winnipeg Labs with Major General Chen, one of Beijing's top commanders at the Academy of Military Medical Science. The Academy is described in the CSIS documents as the highest medical research institution of the People's Liberation Army of the PRC and has offensive biological weapons capabilities. And one of its objectives is to transform the results of basic civilian research into military applications and biotechnologies. The Chinese military can now make more biological weapons and potentially use them against Canadians and our allies. Why did the Prime Minister cover up this national security threat?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
I've already said that the documents first were released and then the additional redactions were actually commenced by us. The second point is when the member says maliciously, we don't know what their intention was. That's the purpose of an RCMP investigation. Secondly, these are individuals that I am deeply concerned about, like the member opposite. And in a process of due process, we understand what they did. With respect to the Chinese government, the military and the government and academia and scientists are all part of their military. That means that any connection that they had whatsoever would have touched that. And so I think it's careful not to
Colleagues, it's hard to hear for the chair to hear the response. If members are not satisfied with the response, sometimes the best opportunity is just to listen to it in silence and let it stand on its own. The honourable member from Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
The Health Minister should actually read the CSIS documents. It actually describes all the breaches that were done and the espionage that was carried out. At the Prime Minister's top public health labs in Canada, Beijing military scientist Dr. Yan was given unfettered access to all the labs and the computer systems at the Winnipeg Labs, which were covertly shared by Dr. Chu with Beijing. Instead of stopping this espionage, the Prime Minister decided to cover it up. Why did the Prime Minister put his admiration for the basic dictatorship of the Communist Party in Beijing ahead of the public safety of Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's important to step back and really consider what the Conservative Party is saying here. At the time in which they were hired, these two Canadian citizens were eminent scientists who were well published and well regarded throughout North America. The fact that they lied and misrepresented themselves, Mr. Speaker, is reprehensible.
Colleagues, I'm going to ask members, please. I'll ask the member from Miramichi Grand Lakes, please, to keep his comments to himself until when he will have the floor at the time that he asks a question. The Honourable Minister of Health has 15 seconds left on the clock.
So I would hope what they're not suggesting is that if they were in power, that they would have interfered politically, been able through clairvoyance to know that these eminent scientists who at this point in time had no reason to believe that they were anything other than Canadian scientists who were doing good research, that they would have interfered politically with clairvoyance and got rid of them before this happened.
The honourable member from Charlebourg-Oates.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday we learned that there were documents with respect to the Winnipeg lab, and the worst is confirmed. There was a leak from the Chinese Communist Party, and the first person represents a serious and credible threat to Canada's economy, was able to access this level 4 laboratory. Why did he not protect Canadians, the Prime Minister, the Honourable Minister of Health? China, Russia, or any other country? Well, this is an attack against our democracy, the House of Commons, and every member here, and it concerns me greatly. And this is the reason why we have measures now to ensure that we protect our public safety with policies that are as strong as possible to make sure our objective is not compromised. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg or Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Minister said that the Prime Minister said he admired the basic dictatorship of China. And this lab in Winnipeg was working on some of the most dangerous viruses in the world. And there were dangerous pathogens that were passed on to the Chinese party. Does he realize that our national safety was in peril? The Honourable Minister, what Canadians realize today, well, when we're talking about national security, it's not a partisan issue. And if there's something we won't take lessons on for the Conservative Party is protecting national security on research and science in Canada. We are the government that did the most to protect science in this country, to protect IP, to help our universities and research centres to identify risks. Mr. Speaker, last January we published a list that indicates our research institutes that not do business. The Honourable Member for Scarborough-Saint Charles. Mr. Speaker, does the Minister know that on March 31st, the Ebola virus was sent to Beijing through Canada? We sent a weapon to a country that is building up its stock of biological weapons. Does the Prime Minister realize that his government failed because the Chinese government is developing biological weapons and he's putting our security at risk? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, rather than talking about facts, what we hear from the opposition today is politicizing national security. And I think that all colleagues that were elected to this chamber, their first responsibility is the security and health of Canadians. As I said, last January, we did publish a list for entities that are protected to protect national security and IP. Will always be here to defend national security in Canada. The Honourable Member for Drummond. The Court of Appeal is clear. Bill 21 is constitutional and does not pose a problem. The fact that we've recognized the right of Quebecers to create their own rules means we've turned the page. But there are a few people who continue to contest it. What will the Liberal government choose to do? Respect the will of Quebecers with this appeals court decision, or continue bickering with Quebec? The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to underscore that our government is clearly committed to defending the rights of liberties protected under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, particularly in terms of the right of freedom of expression and the right to equality. Our government has clearly expressed concerns with respect to the preventive use of the notwithstanding clause. If it does, this decision does get to the Supreme Court, we'll be there to intervene. The Honourable Member for Drummond. Yes, we're talking about respect for Charter and court decisions as well, because despite what the Liberals say, Bill 21 has nothing to be criticized for. It is legitimate. It is a pillar for living together in harmony, which Quebecers want. And Liberals' fears are unfounded. Now that the appeals court has rendered its ruling, will the government commit to not contesting this Bill 21 either directly or indirectly? The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Mr. Speaker, like the Prime Minister has already said, as I have already said, our government is committed to defending the rights and liberties of Canadians protected under the Charter. Nevertheless, we have to protect freedom of religion and expression. We've also said that our government has clearly expressed concerns with respect to the preventive use of the notwithstanding clause. If this case does go before the Supreme Court, our government will intervene. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. It's worrisome. The Liberals want secularism without any trace. They don't want us to say anything. They want to make it insignificant, but separating religion and state does mean something. It means that we respect the beliefs and the non-beliefs of each other, and they never get involved in the relationship with the state. Bill 21 has true implications. And the appeals court has recognized this, and the use of the notwithstanding clause is not only constitutional, but legitimate for Bill 21. The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, Mr. Speaker, as mentioned by the Prime Minister and myself, we are clearly committed to defend the rights and freedoms in the Canadian Charter, notably the right to freedom of religion, expression, and right to equality. On several occasions, we've also said that we have serious concerns with the prevented use of the notwithstanding clause. If this case does get heard by the Supreme Court, our government will be here.
The honourable member from St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister isn't worth the cost or the cover-up. For 3 years, this Prime Minister covered up a terrifying national security breach at Canada's highest security lab, hiding the fact that the head of special pathogens was actively collaborating with top Beijing military scientists engaged in biodefense and bioterrorism. So, in the face of that, will the Prime Minister accept responsibility for this colossal failure on his watch?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I've answered that question on numerous occasions, but let me address the preposition at the start of that question, where he says the working together with another political party. He doesn't want to do that, and I get that. He's used to making partisan points and not reaching across the aisle and collaborating. But you know what happens when you collaborate, Mr. Speaker, when you work together? You get national pharmacare. You get the ability to say to those that have diabetes that you've got your back and you've got medication. You say to women, we're going to give you real freedom, freedom over your sexuality, freedom over your reproductive rights. That's what happens when you stop focusing on partisan politics and you start focusing on results.
The honourable member from St. Albert, Edmonton.
What a disgraceful answer from this minister. The national security culture begins at the top with the Prime Minister. This is a Prime Minister who said that he admires Beijing's basic dictatorship. This is a Prime Minister who, over the past 8 years, has repeatedly ignored Beijing's interference. So, in the face of that, is it any wonder that under this Prime Minister's watch, top Beijing military scientists had unfettered access to some of Canada's most sensitive biological secrets?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, in the first order, that isn't true. What is true is that the Public Health Agency of Canada, which is one of the most respected agencies in the world, that was there for us throughout the pandemic, is entirely responsible for its operations. And the truth is that there were 2 individuals hired. They were Canadian citizens, eminent scientists, well-known and well-respected across Canada and indeed around the world, who lied to the Public Health Agency of Canada. The Public Health Agency of Canada then took the very responsible action of firing those individuals, turning the matter over to the RCMP, where they currently are under investigation, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, where are they?
The honourable member from St. Albert, Edmonton, had the opportunity to ask 2 questions. I'm certain he could speak to his House leader to ask more questions in the House. But until that time, please, I'd ask him to wait his turn until he has the microphone, until he has the floor. The honourable member from Lennox, Addington.
Speaker, evidence speaks otherwise. After 8 years, this Liberal NDP Prime Minister is not worth the cost nor the cover-up. He can't be trusted to keep our people safe. Yesterday, the entire nation was shocked to learn that this government granted 2 People's Liberation Army assets full access to secret research in a top-secret Canadian lab. This represents the biggest security breach since the Cold War. And this happened under a Prime Minister who famously said he admires China's basic dictatorship. Mr. Speaker, how can Canadians trust a Prime Minister that fails to take national security seriously?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, the representations made by the member are inaccurate, and I would invite people to read the documents, which have been fully redacted. But this is the contrast, Mr. Speaker, between a party that is focused on partisanship and difference. And you know what? The member opposite talks about working with another party and what that might accomplish. What about dental care, Mr. Speaker? When we focused on cooperation, we were able to get dental care done for